Cursemark has been on my list for a while, and now that the early access is here, it does not disappoint. 1 minute, I am melting bosses in seconds by combining runes in something that I'd say is very ARPG inspired. The next, I'm going around the world to open secret doors so that I can double back to collect blessings more easily in the next run, and also explore some very Souls-inspired secrets. They're hidden around all the zones, and it's very cool to find them. Let's get into the good, things I like and think Cursemark does well. The bad, things I dislike but aren't too big of a deal. And the ugly, the thing I dislike most in Cursemark. I then wrap everything up with a quick verdict and recommendation. So first up, let's start talking about these crazy builds. Make a build, you have to do a few things. Before going into a run, you set up your loadout. This consists of an attack. That is your basic energy generator. You spend energy on your spell. A couple examples could be the Divine Spear, which has a long but slow thrust, and a powerful sweep. The sweep is very good for hitting multiple enemies, by the way. On the other hand, if you prefer it fast, think of something like the Fire or Shadow Weapon. These strike rapidly, making them very good for chain attack runes. Next up, there's your spell. This is your bread and butter DPS. Reaching 100% energy gives you 1 charge, and you can bank quite a few of them. I'm not going to cover specifics here because spells are very varied, but you start with Fireball, and trust me, it gets better from there. Then there's the Ward, a defensive ability that works a little bit differently. See, everything else you can technically use infinitely within a fight. The Ward has a limited number of charges per encounter. This could be something like a shield if it explodes into projectiles, a massive increase in armor, which can also chill enemies, reducing their movement, or an effect that causes you to heal instead of taking damage. Pretty darn handy. And then, last but not least, the ultimate. Think of this as a big nuke button. You need to do damage to charge it up, and then unleash it. That said, later it does fall off in favor of your spells, because while the ultimate is more damage per cast in most cases, spells are more damage over time since you can charge them much faster. A fun example of an ultimate would be the Rage Blast, which causes a giant fiery explosion, and if you have a bunch of runes attached to it, can do all sorts of other crazy things. And so you combine all of this stuff with things you get in your runs. Blessings, percentile increases. Talismans can also be percentile increases to things like damage or armor. Some of them have some cooler transformative effects though. Like a talisman that gives you spinny hammers. And then runes. Runes are where you really get to make decisions and start crafting your own build. You socket a rune into an attack, spell, ward, or ultimate, and it changes it in some way. This could be something like the Firebomb rune, which is a chain attack effect, so as you attack, you generate firebombs that explode when they touch enemies. On the other hand, the rune could add projectile seeking, so now, instead of firing your projectile in a line, it actively chases enemies. Or the rune could cause you to deal increased damage, apply a status effect, curse an enemy, and so much more. So remember that crazy clip from the intro where I absolutely melted a boss? Well, that was from a few things, the first of which was Shadow Blade. I had the Ice Pillar and Frostbomb chain attack runes in it, so I was attacking very quickly, and I was also applying the Electrified status effect in addition to the 2 damage procs. Then I had the Blades of Judgment Ward, which causes 2 spinny swords that build up a shield. So as long as I'm near an enemy, I'm probably not going to take that much damage. Last but not least, the special sauce was the Empyrean Blade Ultimate, where every time I attacked, I generated projectiles. I put fire emissions, so small fire projectiles, on my projectiles because I hear you like projectiles to go for your projectiles, and let them apply poison on hit. Combine all that, I attack super fast, generate a bunch of pets, and the boss melts. And so that's just one example of the kind of build that makes Cursemark's combat awesome. If you want to know more about how to get through the early game or put together your own build, get subscribed because I'm going to be coming out with a beginner's guide very soon. Oh, and leave a like while you're down there because the YouTube algorithm really likes that. But that out of the way, on to the second thing that I really like about Cursemark. That is the world and the sense of exploration, because I've played a fair number of Soulslikes, I've played a fair number of roguelikes, and I've played a fair number of ARPGs. Very often, when you combine Soulslike and roguelike, I don't like the end result. But Cursemark is different. because Cursemark feels way more like a ARPG Soulslike than it does a roguelike. Yes, there are roguelike elements, your runes, talismans, etc., blessings, those get reset. But here's the cool part. Cursemark has a world that evolves and reacts to your actions as a player. So at the start, you're just exploring, hoping to find something interesting, like a boss to fight. But pretty soon you'll notice something. These little inscription pillars. One of them might say something like, smite the sword with strokes thrice and 4 to reveal the prize for all the world. This is the puzzle from the Sword Fork, the game's very first zone. So I guess minor spoilers on how to solve this. You then attack the giant sword in the center of the zone 3 times and 4 times. Once you do, a talisman chest is revealed. The talisman chest is not revealed in this run. It is now here in every run, giving you an additional talisman right when you start out. Similarly, you will find some doors that do not open from this side. After all, this is a Souls-like. You gotta have doors that don't open from this side. But if you go to the other side and open them, that shortcut is now going to be unlocked. And so much in the way that as you play through a Metroidvania, you gain new tools, or as you play through a Souls-like and you unlock the right door, you find out, oh hey, the starting bonfire was right near the final boss. Very similar thing here in Cursemark. And that is very important because of the other roguelike mechanic Cursemark uses, the Cursemark itself. Every time you clear a room, enemies get stronger. And there's an increased chance that the extremely dangerous, highly aggressive, very fast Cursemarked foes will appear. These things can absolutely shred you even if you have a good build. So, if you want to fight a boss, you don't want to fight it with like 20 Cursemark. You want to fight it as soon as possible, taking a direct path. So you're going to naturally alternate between exploring to find new stuff, then getting a good run and beelining towards the boss. And this is also where the game's really cool meta progression system comes in, where you use astral tiers to clear corruption and upgrade your benches. So you might get a bench that increases your rune level or fuses 2 runes into 1, giving you more character power. If you spend some astral tiers, it will then have 2 uses instead of a normal 1. Like with a puzzle, this is a permanent unlock. So if you decide, okay, I want to take on one of the tough bosses, your goal is going to be to path through as many useful upgrades as possible while taking the shortest path by avoiding unnecessary or low-value rooms, which makes this a pretty cool optimization puzzle. In the past, roguelike Souls-likes have not clicked with me. This one absolutely does, and I think it's because there's been so much care and attention put into the world. In addition to the astral tiers, there's one other resource called Essence. This is used at a lot of places to do things like unlock blessings. Again, the standard roguelike buffs. Those are a bit less interesting, but that doesn't make them less important. After all, it can be a big boost to your damage or defenses, provide extra healing, health, etc. And so yeah, if you enjoy exploring a world like Souls-like combat or that ARPG OP build feeling, there's a very good chance that Cursemark is going to be for you. That brings me to the bad. A couple of things I disliked that really aren't that big of a deal, but I did want to mention them. And you might have already noticed the first one, because you can put a lot of projectiles on your skills. You can have your projectiles generate more projectiles, and this generates a lot of screen clutter. So, unless enemies are physically unable to damage you because you're killing them so quickly, it can very often feel like you are playing rocket tag, stacking a bunch of bullshit, and killing the enemies before they can kill you because you're not going to be able to see or dodge their attacks. Now, I'm not saying take all the projectiles away. I think stacking bullshit is a core part of why people enjoy ARPG combat, myself included. But I'd love to see a transparency slider or some sort of culling on some of the effects, especially things like trails and emissions that really clutter up the screen a lot. And then the last thing for this section, really more of a pet peeve and a thing I disliked, but controller support feels a little off to me, especially when it comes to spells that are linear projectiles which you have to aim. Generally, if anything's even vaguely Souls-like, my instinct is to reach for a controller. I guess Dark Souls has trained me well in that regard, and so that's what I did. And it felt a little awkward. I missed some enemies with a fireball spell, my dodge timing wasn't quite as tight as I wanted, so I hopped over to keyboard and mouse, and you know what? The game feels really good on keyboard and mouse. This brings me to the ugly, my biggest complaint about Cursemark. Still relatively minor in the grand scheme of things, but I wish the UI was a little bit more coherent and some of the stats were easier to understand at a glance. Let's tackle the UI first. Your spell, ward, and ultimate are portrayed in 3 different ways. The spell is pips that charge up to denote uses. The word has a number bottom right. When it's on cooldown, there's a big red icon, but if it's out of charges, the icon just looks like it's ready to use. The ultimate always looks like it's ready to use, but you need to look for the little 100% at the bottom. I would much prefer it was grayed out when it was unusable. You can have some sort of indicator like the pips, numbers, or percentage, but it should be consistent across all 3, not 3 different things. When it comes to the stat stuff, the game has a lot of different keywords. So, burning is an elemental status, which is different from poison and bleed. Those are curses. Some runes scale off of curses, but do not scale off of elemental statuses. And this is split more or less equally between the main tooltip and a sub-tooltip. Now, when a game presents a lot of information at once, I think sub-tooltips are a good idea, but in this case, because each rune only does one thing, it would be really nice to have the information on the rune itself at a glance. The game also has soft caps inspired most likely from Dark Souls. This means that 100% is not necessarily 100%. If soft cap is, let's say, 60%, that means from 0 to 60%, 1% of a stat is 1% of a stat. But once the soft cap kicks in, 1% on a rune or a talisman is less than 1% of actual stats, with the exact number diminishing further the closer you get to the hard cap. If you go to the stats screen, then yes, you can see these things. But since this is a separate tab, it's pretty hard to parse. You have to go to a separate tab, then go back to your runes, then go to a separate tab. It'd be really nice if all of this was just included or integrated in some way into the skill tooltips. Also, because there's a second tab and it requires a lot of reading, I suspect a lot of people are just going to overlook it. I know for me personally, it took like 20 hours of playing Cursemark before I looked at the stat screen once. Yes, I know, insert joke here about ARPG players and reading name a less iconic duo. The good news is, most of the time, if you think a rune is a good idea, it's probably a good idea. You don't need to know the specifics of a difference between, say, reach and size. Reach, by the way, is the distance from your character that the attack projects. Size is the AoE effect. You can kind of just socket both of them, use the skill, and see results and learn from your choices. So I don't think this is a major impediment, but it's definitely something that I personally would like to see improved. So now it's time to wrap everything up with a verdict. Before I do though, I want to take a minute to thank Clyde Games and Mad Mushroom, not only for providing me an early key to the game, but also for being so great in terms of taking feedback and changing stuff. Like at one point, I happened to mention that some of the weapons felt lackluster, like they're kind of copies of each other with different color animations. Next day, I continued playing and they're all reworked. All of a sudden, things feel distinct. The lightning attack constantly critting, the fire attack much faster, the poison attacks an AoE explosion. So huge thanks for letting me be part of that process, and I really am looking forward to where the game goes from here. And so, what's the verdict? Well, for me personally, I strongly recommend Cursemark. I've had a ton of fun with this game, and it's sort of changed my perspective on the roguelike plus Souls-like genre blend. Something that before this, I hadn't really liked. But if you take the world and the feeling of exploration and really let people explore without feeling like they're punished, I think it works really well. Now, the game is entering early access. This means it is not fully content complete. There's going to be 3 bosses to defeat for the early access content, which over time is going to be expanded. In addition, I suspect there's going to be quite a few more spells. Right now, weapons, spells, wards, ultimates, all that, you have 1 to 2 options, and I think each element is going to ultimately have 3. So, a ton more build variety. But you know what? Even in its current form, it is a damn solid game that, in my opinion, is well worth your time and money. Though, if you do prefer that more polished, fully content-complete experience, hey, wishlist it for now and hold off for the 1.0 release. In terms of me personally, I'm going to be diving in a bit more, probably going to make a beginner's guide tomorrow or the day after if you're watching this as it releases. And then after that, I may make another video or 2, depending on how I'm feeling and how many questions I get on the first couple. But of course, if Cursemark is up your alley, please let me know some of your thoughts down below. Also, if there's any other roguelike plus Souls-like games that you think do a really good job, let me know because I'm curious to play them. On the other hand, if you're looking for something else to watch and the beginner's guide is not out yet, then maybe check out my thoughts on another upcoming Souls-like game, Valor Mortis. Or, if you like ARPGs, well, there are several indie ARPGs that I've played recently, like a lot, and would recommend. Both of those videos are up in the card and down below. Now, thank you very much for watching to the end. Don't forget to check out my Steam curator page for more reviews, and I'll see you in the next one.